All right. Hi, everyone. So good to see you all and to see so many familiar faces. My name is Elizabeth Stevens, and I work as our program director. Clearly, my voice is not working tonight very well. I lost it, but I am really happy to introduce Monse, who's a member of our staff and our Spanish speaking programs coordinator, who will give a much louder and well-deserved intro for Jared. So, Monse, thank you. I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be able to present our speaker tonight. I've worked closely with Jared and I've seen the impact he's had in our community. So it's lovely to see everyone who's able to be joining us tonight. Jared Bendifallah is a peer support group facilitator, peer support specialist, peer-to-peer class teacher, and the Silence Youth and lead presenter and speaker for NAMI WLA Los Angeles. As a peer support group facilitator, he has led over 450 groups since October of 2020. He's also a professional speaker and has spoken multiple times for NAMI Westside LA, once for NAMI Urban Los Angeles, and once for the Self-Help and Recovery Exchange, sharing his story of recovery and his 5 pillars of recovery to mental wellness. He has developed these 5 pillars of recovery to mental wellness over the last several years by observing what has worked for him along his recovery journey and what he has seen work for others through his time as a mental health advocate with NAMI. The 5 pillars of recovery can help people in recovery and family members by providing hope and a roadmap of recovery. Implementing these pillars can lead to profound growth and healing over time. Jared also has a bachelor's degree in physiology and neuroscience from UC San Diego and a master's degree in urban planning from the University of Southern California. From NAMI West LA, we want to thank you, Jared, for sharing your 5 pillars of recovery to mental wellness with our community. I'm going to pass the mic off to you.
Thank you, Monse. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who's here. Really appreciate everybody showing support. So I'll just get going. Have you ever felt a sudden rush of anxiety at the thought of talking to someone? Or maybe feeling overwhelmed at the thought of just saying hello to somebody? Or feeling so overwhelmed emotionally that it felt impossible to say anything? I sure have. Did you know that this is actually a sign of our mental health? Let me explain. As a toddler, I was diagnosed with high-functioning autism. At that age, after I started to make sounds and verbalize, I became nonverbal again, and I actually had to go to speech therapy for several years. Fast forward to middle school and high school, I had heavy, heavy social anxiety, to the point that I used to have physiological reactions, dried mouth, a tear in my eye, at the thought of just saying hello to someone. I could barely utter a few words out of my mouth. Can you relate? I felt so isolated from my classmates, and as a result, my self-worth plummeted. I looked around at everyone else, well-adjusted socially, happy, fun, talkative, and then I saw myself, shy, anxious, scared, and I felt shame. I kept everything to myself, and it didn't even occur to me at that time that I was going through a mental health crisis, so I didn't reach out for help. As a result, I suffered in silence for years and dissociated from the shame and the anxiety just to get by. Things did start to get better at the end of high school. I started to make new friends. It became easier to socialize. I felt a little bit more confident. But the impact of my previous years had already laid a mark on me. And then in college, on the surface, I actually had a pretty good college experience. I had a girlfriend, I had some amazing friends, I had 2 incredible part-time jobs. I was one of the leaders of the on-campus Buddhist club and the off-campus Buddhist club the last 4 or 5 months of college, and I had a 3.57 GPA as a physiology and neuroscience major. Unfortunately, though, that shame and that anxiety was still there lurking under the surface. Have you ever pushed an emotion away or stuffed it down because it was just too hard to deal with? Well, for me, it wasn't 10 minutes of pushing them away. It was years and years and decades of pushing these emotions away because I just couldn't handle my emotions. In high school and college, I was always able to keep myself together by focusing on school. But suddenly, after college, I was thrust into a new world without any structure or direction for my life. I came back After college, I moved back to my childhood home. After graduating from college in 2012, I moved back to my childhood home in 2013 in the spring. And between 2013 and 2015, my mental health completely fell apart. I used to look forward to sleep and dread waking up in the morning because sleep was the only time I felt relief from my condition. I started to binge eat at night to cope with what I was feeling and developed a full-blown eating disorder. I began to have terrifying delusions in my mind, which felt more real and more compelling than the outside world around me. I became disconnected from everyone and everything, and I became hopeless and suicidal. Everything culminated in 2015 when I spent 50 days, yes, you heard that right, 50 days, 50, at a psychiatric hospital and 4.5 months at a residential recovery program. The psych hospital was one of the worst experiences of my entire life. While I was there, I was in the middle of a full-blown manic episode, a full-blown psychotic episode, and I was also in the middle of a full-blown eating disorder. Being locked up in a building for 50 straight days with no access to the outside world was terrifying and depressing. After 50 days, I was discharged, not because I was doing any better, but simply because, if I remember correctly, my health insurance company, they just stopped paying for me to be there. The next couple months were just as bad as the previous. I was extremely hopeless, extremely suicidal, and none of the therapists that my family tried to find for me were able to help. Thankfully, though, my parents did not give up. And one day, in August of 2015, my mom comes to my door, knocks on my door, opens the door, and says something like, "Jared, pack your bags. We're going to Colorado." And yes, of course, I was a 24, 25-year-old, so I could have easily said no. I had that right as an adult. But for whatever reason, I decided to willingly go along with it. I can still remember that very first day like it was yesterday at the residential. My parents were talking to the psychiatrist on staff, and my sister and I were taking a walk in the neighborhood. The entire time that we were walking and talking, all I could think about was throwing myself in front of a car and taking my life. Spoiler alert, I'm still here. And then it was my turn to talk to the psychiatrist on staff. Have you ever had a moment in your life or your recovery journey where you look back and you realize that that was the moment when everything changed for the better? Well, for me, it was that first meeting with a psychiatrist. I sat down in her office. She looked me in the eye and she asked me a very simple question, a question that I am very familiar now with as a mental health advocate. She asked me, "Are you feeling suicidal? Are you thinking about suicide?" And I said, "Yes." And in that moment, I felt this wave of relief because finally, it was okay to not be okay. Finally, it was okay to be feeling suicidal. And for the first time in 3 very, very excruciatingly long years, I had hope, real tangible hope that things could actually get better for me. While I was at the residential, I got on the right medication to stabilize my brain. I overcame my eating disorder, and I started to get my life back, to pick up the pieces, and to try and create something new for myself. But what I remember the most about the residential, besides the groups, besides the free time, besides the other clients that I got to know, was the tough love and support from the staff, the nurse, the therapists, and the psychiatrists. The psychiatrist and the nurse were instrumental in helping me to find the right medication to stabilize my brain, while the staff and the therapists were instrumental in giving me the tough love and support that I needed to recover from my eating disorder. I can still remember it like it was yesterday. It was probably 3 to 4 days into my time at the residential, and I binged one morning on a bunch of bagels or something like that. And I went to a staff member and I told them that I binged. I told them that I messed up. And I thought I was going to get some very soft, compassionate, tender response from them. But instead they said, "Well, you better do better next time." And I'm not saying that that would work for everybody, but it was actually what I needed to hear. I needed to hear that it was my responsibility to take the right actions and to get better. And so their tough love and support, not only with what they said in that moment, but also holding me accountable to having 3 regular meals a day, regardless of what I was thinking or feeling around food, was essential for my recovery journey. To put it bluntly, the residential program completely saved my life, and I do not know if I would be here today without that residential. After 4.5 months, myself, my parents, the staff, the nurse, the therapist, and the psychiatrist all agreed that I was safe enough to move on to the next phase of my life. So, in early 2016, I came back to Los Angeles. My parents helped me to find an apartment in West LA, and I enrolled in a Japanese class at Santa Monica Community College, where I would go on to earn an associate's degree in liberal arts and humanities with a certificate in Asian studies. And then in 2017, I got a Dean's Merit Scholarship from USC, the University of Southern California, for half of my tuition to get a master's degree in urban transportation planning. And I got my degree in 2019 in June. Having that structure day after day, week after week at SMC and USC from 2017 to 2019 was exactly the type of structure that I desperately needed along my recovery journey, and exactly the type of structure that I did not have after graduating from UC San Diego in 2012. In August of 2019, as I was transitioning from school to looking for work, I did a Google search for a mental health support group in West Los Angeles. And of course, I found NAMI, which led me to being a participant in these groups for a long time, and then becoming a peer support group facilitator, which I still do 3 times a week, plus a peer support specialist for NAMI, as well as being a peer-to-peer class teacher, Ending the Silence Youth and Lead presenter, and speaker. In 2022, in the summer of 2022, I developed these 5 pillars of recovery to mental wellness by thinking about what has worked for me along my recovery journey, what has kept me stable over the last 8 to 9 years, trying to dissect all of my varied experiences in the last 8 to 9 years into a very simple and easily applicable 5 pillars of recovery, which I will share with you now, which have helped me tremendously along my recovery journey. And I truly believe that they can help you or a loved one as well. The 5 pillars of recovery are: pillar number 1, basic stability. Pillar number 2, having a self-care plan. Pillar number 3, trusting the process of recovery. Pillar number 4, finding your community, finding your tribe. And pillar number 5, expanded self-awareness and following your intuition. The first pillar of recovery is basic stability, which includes clinical support, non-clinical support, and structure. When I talked about clinical support, I'm referring typically to having a psychiatrist and/or a therapist. With a psychiatrist, you can decide whether medication is the right route for you to help you to manage the symptoms of your mental health condition. And if so, to work with your psychiatrist to hopefully find a medication that has side effects that are tolerable, that you can live with. I've been on the same medication now for about 9 years. And although there are side effects, so far they've been side effects that I can live with and that I can adjust to by making lifestyle changes. I truly believe that the mark of a good patient-psychiatrist relationship is where there's an open dialogue and they're willing to listen to your concerns about a medication, about the side effects. They're willing to talk to you, and you guys are on a team. It's not a one-way dialogue. It's not a one-way conversation. And then therapy is another form of clinical support. And there are so many different types of therapy out there. There's dialectical behavioral therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy. There is acceptance and commitment therapy. There's group therapy. You just have to figure out what works for you. In my estimation, in my personal experience, I would say that about 50% of the therapeutic relationship is about the actual relationship itself, the connection you have with that person. Do you feel safe? Can you trust them to open up? Do they talk to you in a compassionate way? And then the other 50% is, what are their credentials? What are the qualifications? What types of therapy are they familiar with? What types of therapy can they help you with? And what I like to say about finding clinical support is it can be a little tough. It can be like trying to find the right friends or trying to find the right partner. Sometimes you have to try a few people before you find the right person. So even if it's hard and it's discouraging, you still haven't been able to find the right psychiatrist or therapist for you, don't give up and keep on trying, because once you find the right psychiatrist and the right therapist, it has the potential to really, really benefit you in the long run throughout your recovery journey. The next aspect of this first pillar is non-clinical support, which typically could include family, friends, life coach, mentor, pastor, rabbi, 12-step sponsor, non-denominational spiritual guide, whatever it is for you. We all need non-clinical support. I did a little funky calculation the other day, and I assumed that if we assume that each of us sleeps for a third of our of the 24 hours a day, we have around 112 hours left every single week. We only have 1 hour with a therapist and maybe 30 to 60 minutes with a psychiatrist in a given week. So that's 110 or 111 hours where we're not in therapy, where we still might need some help. And that is why non-clinical support is so important, so that you can vent to family, vent to friends, get support from people who know you and love you and care about you. I would invite you on your worksheet to ask yourself, what is one way that I can expand my support system today? Could be clinical support, could be non-clinical support. Take an internal survey of the type of support you have in your life today, and then try and expand it by one person, for example. Finally, the last aspect of this first pillar of basic stability is structure. In my own personal experience with a mental health condition, actually with multiple mental health conditions, one, structure is a way of saying, yes, I am in recovery and I still choose to try and live my life. Because without structure, from my own experience, it's too easy to spend all day, every day, just thinking obsessively and making ourselves suffer by how much we're hurting, by how bad we're feeling, by everything that we might feel is broken about us. I'll share a little bit of a story with you. Between 2013 and 2015, which were truly the dark years of my life, when nothing went right, one of the worst mistakes I made was thinking that I can't live until I completely eradicate all my weaknesses, all of my triggers, all of my traumas, and all of my suffering. And because of that, I became so focused on that and only that I forgot to actually live life in the present. I forgot to actually build some structure into my life. Furthermore, somebody in my life back then emailed me and told me that I had a negative intention towards my life, a negative intention towards life in general. It was brutal, but it was true. And that is why I advocate so passionately for structure as part of basic stability. There's different types of structure that we can implement into our lives. It just depends on the level of investment that you are comfortable with and the level of effort that you are comfortable with. At the lowest end, you could attend a support group once a week, where you just go and you listen and you talk to others with no pressure of performing whatsoever. In my experience, even just having one thing to do every week is enough to give me the feeling of satisfaction, like I am doing something with my life. And then all of my other time turns into free time that I can enjoy and do what I want with. But it's important to at least have one thing going on every single week. Another low-level investment in terms of structure is volunteering. This could be at a food pantry or an animal shelter or a soup kitchen. You could call an organization that you feel passionate about and ask them if they have an orientation coming up, if they're looking for volunteers. And then you can volunteer once a week for a couple hours, or 2 or 3 times a week for a couple hours at a time. Now, they might have tasks that they expect you to do, but you're not getting paid and you're not working towards a degree. So it's relatively low pressure. For me, when I was in Colorado at the residential, I actually volunteered at a food pantry. And it was exactly the type of structure that I needed at that point in my recovery journey. It actually helped me to recover from my eating disorder, because I would eat lunch and then I would have all this anxiety about food. I would walk down the street to the food pantry, immerse myself in volunteering. And then 3 hours later, I was done with volunteering and I was no longer anxious because I immersed myself in the moment. So again, volunteering is a very low level, low pressure way to add some structure into your life. And I'll also add, if anybody here is a family member of a loved one struggling with a mental health condition, when it comes to structure, if you can in any way possible, whether it's financially or logistically or through emotional or through encouragement, encourage your loved one to take a risk and to do something with their week, I truly believe you can be making a huge difference in their recovery. And then finally, we have the highest level of investments forms of structure, going to school and working. When it comes to school, you can do really low level effort or high level. For example, you could take a class pass-fail and set it for a letter grade. You could go to the office for students with disabilities and ask for later due dates for homework and essays and projects and longer times for exams. You could start by taking just one easy class at a community college. And then if the following semester you feel up to doing more, you could take 2 or 3 classes and eventually a full class load of 4 classes while working towards an associate's degree or an undergraduate degree. Finally, working. Working can be a high level of investment and a high level of pressure because your boss is going to have expectations of you. But you could also start by interning somewhere, low pressure, 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week, or you could work part-time, 15, 20, 25 hours a week, or full-time, 30, 35 hours, 40 hours a week, whatever it is you're comfortable. But sometimes I've noticed that there's a lot of fulfillment that can come from being a student or having a legitimate job because we're earning income for ourselves and we feel like we're doing something with our lives. But take it slowly when it comes to structure. So I would invite you to think about the type of structure that you would gravitate towards yourself. And on your worksheet, to write down what type of structure could you envision for your life today? Not 5 years from now, not 10 years from now, today, as you are today, along your recovery journey. The second pillar of recovery is having a self-care plan. This includes cultivating the different aspects of your self-care on a daily basis, your mental well-being, your emotional, your physical, etc., etc. It also includes having coping skills that you can use when in distress, and my favorite, having just one non-negotiable self-care tool that you can use on a daily basis. The first part is cultivating the different aspects of your well-being. This is about sitting down with intention and asking yourself, what are the self-care tools that I can use on a daily basis or a couple times a week to take care of my emotional well-being, to take care of my mental well-being, to take care of my body, to take care of my finances, to take care of my need for human connection. And then to really write those things down and make a plan with intention to be consistent about following those aspects of your self-care plan. The second aspect is having coping skills that you can use when in distress. The great boxer Mike Tyson once said, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth." And the reason I bring this up is no matter how perfect you are at practicing self-care, recovery is hard at times. And I think everybody in this room knows that. Recovery is hard at times. And life is going to punch us in the mouth sometimes. And we're going to get stressed. And sometimes I might feel like I'm in a panic or in a crisis mode. And it's during those moments when I need coping skills to get me down from the peak of stress to like, I'm not feeling great, but I'm okay and I can start to think clearly. So for example, I like to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is I'm stressed out of my mind and 1 is I'm super, super calm. The goal of having coping skills to use when in distress is to get yourself from a 12 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 to maybe a 7 or a 6 or a 5 out of 10. So what are some examples of coping skills to use when in distress? Well, vent to family. Rely on your non-clinical and clinical support. Vent to your family. Vent to your friends. Reach out to your therapist for a session as soon as possible. Reach out to your mentor or your 12-step sponsor. You can also call a warm line. For those who don't know, a warm line is a free service that you can call, and it's usually staffed by peer support specialists and or counselors, where you can talk to a stranger on the phone who doesn't know you and is not going to judge you. And you can vent and talk about your emotions and talk about your stressors, and they can just be there to listen and provide emotional support. And finally, one of my favorite tools for when I'm super stressed out, is to take out your cell phone and to go to the voice memo app and press record. And I will take a walk. I will leave the house, press record, walk in an area of my neighborhood, of the area that I live in, where I know nobody's really going to be hearing me. And I just talk to myself for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, sometimes even hour and a half. And it's a great way if I can't lean on support from people in my life in that moment, or if I feel like what I'm going through is so private that I'd be embarrassed to talk about it. It's a great way to be able to vent to myself and support myself. So what I would like to invite you to do is on a piece of paper, on your worksheet, or later on the piece of paper or on an index card, to write down what are the top 5 coping skills that you can use when you are in distress. And then to keep that index card or piece of paper somewhere accessible with you, like a pants pocket or a purse or a wallet. The index card technique, by the way, I got from a therapist at a residential program that I went to. Finally, the last aspect of the second pillar is having just one non-negotiable, consistent self-care tool that we can use on a daily basis. This should be something that acts as a foundation for our self-care, an anchor for our self-care. It should be something that feels natural to us, that feels good to do. It should be something that we naturally gravitate towards, that we don't have to force ourselves to do. If you're having to sit there and force yourself to do this, this is not the right number one self-care tool for you. Now, for some people, it could be catching the waves at 5 a.m., right? Surfing, right? For some people, it could be exercising 4 to 5 times at the gym every single week. For others, it could be some form of creativity. But for me, it's journaling. Now, when I journal, it's like this safe space where I can express everything I'm thinking and everything I'm feeling without having to worry about what anybody else is going to think about it. No judgment whatsoever. In addition to that, when I journal, it makes me feel like I'm on a journey filled with meaning and purpose, where everything I go through is part of the larger story of my life. I would invite you on your worksheet to write down, what is your number one non-negotiable self-care tool right now in the present? And if you don't have one, spend some time thinking about it later on and give something a try, because I promise it is so helpful to have one self-care tool that is the bedrock of your recovery journey. And for me, that has been journaling, no doubt, 150%. The third pillar of recovery. You ready? Trusting the process of recovery itself. As in journaling, when we notice those small moments of success every day, it actually indicates to our inner self that we are moving in the right direction. When we do this, when we pay attention to those small victories, we create momentum along our recovery journey and faith in ourselves and in the process of recovery. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, once said, "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Even the longest and most difficult of journeys has to start somewhere. And I'm sure we all know in this room that recovery from a mental health condition is a long journey. But we must start from where we are and move forward courageously every single day. It doesn't mean that we won't have bad days or setbacks. It just means that when we have a bad day or setback, we pick ourselves up and keep on moving forward. Write down this affirmation on your worksheet. And this applies to whether it's your recovery journey or any other hobby or profession that you're pursuing. Trusting the process leads to progress. Again, trusting the process leads to progress. And progress, in my experience, has its own rewards. When I'm progressing, I feel more confident about my journey. I feel more assured, and I have hope that if I can just make a little bit of progression every single day, that I'm moving in the right direction. One of the things I've noticed about trusting the process of recovery is it is one of the best antidotes to that existential despair that I know I have fallen victim to along my recovery journey when I just feel like nothing is getting better and there is no hope. When we remember that trusting the process leads to progress, we can remind ourselves in these low moments that we're just going through a down period and eventually the tide is going to change. I'd like to share with you one example which will provide more clarity on this pillar. Have you ever tried to lose weight or gain muscle? Well, I know I have. When I was a junior in high school, I was a 110-pound scrawny stick figure of a teenager. And I decided that I wanted to put on some muscle. I made a plan for myself. And every week I would go to the gym to work out my different muscle groups: chest, triceps, back biceps, and legs. Each time I did a particular exercise for a particular muscle group. I would either increase the amount of weight that I was lifting by 2.5 to 5 pounds, or increase the number of repetitions for each set. In order to keep myself motivated, I recorded all of my progress in a notebook. In this way, I was able to put on 32.5 pounds of muscle in just 18 months. This demonstrates the power of making incremental progress over time while reaching for a goal that's meaningful to you. These small improvements can lead to big improvements and big gains over time. Remember a time when you looked at yourself in the mirror and you didn't even recognize that person? That's similar to how it can be along your mental health recovery journey or for that of a loved one. Trust in the process. Have faith that if you take things day by day and week by week, you can achieve miracles in your life. People will look at you and be blown away by the person who you've become and the progress that you've made. You just have to trust the process. The fourth pillar of recovery is finding your community, finding your tribe, the power of community. Now, this could come in many forms. It could just be a friend group, it could be a meetup group, or it could be a support group. For example, a meetup club is where you go onto meetup.com and you find a language discussion group, or a board game club, or a dodgeball club, something that piques your interest. And you go and you find out that the people there are super, super cool and people you want to get to know. And then every single Sunday you go to the dodgeball club or you go to the book club. And over time, it becomes your home. It becomes your community. It becomes the people that you trust and have fun with and have a good time around. And it turns into your social community. Another example is a support group. For those who may not know, a support group is typically a place where people with a similar life condition, such as a physical health condition or a mental health condition, come together in a safe, grounded, authentic space where they can share openly about their struggles and their challenges and feel seen, heard, and supported. For me, as some of you in the audience know, my community came through NAMI WLA. Within 3 to 4 weeks of attending the NAMI WLA peer support group on Wednesday nights at the D.D. Hearst Center in Culver City in 2019, I knew I had found my community of people who could understand my struggles and I could understand theirs. I didn't have to be embarrassed to talk openly about my struggles and challenges. And in fact, people could often understand and relate. And you know why I also know that this is my community? Because I've tried going to a meetup board game group. I've tried going to a spiritual discussion group or a language exchange group. And I never feel the same sense of home or community that I do every single time I attend a support group with NAMI WLA. I would invite you right now, well, not now, but my call to action for this week is to spend 5 to 10 minutes doing an internet search for a meetup group or a support group in your area and make a commitment to yourself to attend at least one group one time. And if you're a family member, see if you can encourage your loved one to take a chance, to take a risk, and just to attend one group once, to give it a shot, no matter how intimidating it may be. And maybe even see if they can invite a friend to go. Because that's actually what I did my very first NAMI group. I went with a friend, but then I got comfortable right after that. Remember, alone we are strong, together we are stronger. The fifth and final pillar of recovery is expanded self-awareness and following your intuition. This includes knowing your gifts and your strengths and your talents, as well as your struggles and your challenges, and using the power of your intuition to guide you towards your deepest dreams and your soul's purpose. This fifth pillar However, cannot come before the first two pillars of basic stability and having a self-care plan. But once you have these two pillars taken care of, you have clinical support, non-clinical support, you have something to do with your week every week, and you have a robust self-care plan, and you know how to take care of yourself in crisis and on a daily basis, the fifth pillar can add so much richness and fulfillment into your life. Knowing what your strengths are, what your talents and your gifts are, can help you figure out what you want to do with your life and what you emotionally gravitate towards. The more self-aware you become and the more you channel that self-awareness into positive action, into moving your life in a particular direction, the more amazing experiences that you can have along your recovery journey and the incredible people you can meet. And I promise you will look back and be so grateful for everything that happened, because now you see why what happened happened. And it has such a deeper meaning now that you're on the other side of the recovery journey. There are so many different ways that we can expand our self-awareness, but I will touch on a couple. One of them is to ask people we know for feedback. For example, family, friends, life coach, mentor, spiritual guide, pastor, rabbi, 12-step sponsor, etc., etc. People who have known you over a long period of time and who can speak to your gifts and your talents and your abilities. In fact, I just did this recently. I asked several friends and several coworkers what they thought my strengths were, and it really helped me to see myself from a bigger picture. Because in my experience, when I'm really in the thick of my mental health condition, when I'm feeling foggy and I'm feeling horrible about myself, my perception of myself is a lot less accurate than probably somebody else's perception of me. So sometimes I think it's very valuable to ask the people we care about who know us deeply what they think we bring to the table in relationships and to the world and in life in general. Another way to expand our self-awareness is to take a personality test online. This could be the Myers-Briggs test or the Enneagram test, for example. I know for me, when I took the Myers-Briggs test, I think I'm INFP. Yeah, that's right. I think INFP. And when I took the test, they gave me a list of 25 to 30 characteristics. And when I saw this list, I was like, oh my God, check, 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 check. I related to literally 95% of the characteristics. And to just see a list of 25 things that are all strengths has got to do something for one's self-confidence, right? Like, wow, 25 things that I'm super good at doing and the 25 things that I bring to relationships. Wow, it's amazing. So whether it's the Myers-Briggs test or the Enneagram test or any other personality test online, it's very easy. It's very simple to do. It'll probably take you 15 minutes. And it could be very enlightening, and it could help you become more self-aware about what you bring to the table, your strengths and your gifts, and maybe even your struggles and your challenges as well. Another way to expand our self-awareness is journaling. Now, I talked about journaling a lot before, but one of the things I didn't mention is that journaling can be a great tool for reflection and self-awareness. Sometimes I will revisit a journal from 2 months ago or a year ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and I will understand my life from a completely different perspective. And not only that, just the aspect of sitting down with intention and recording my thoughts, recording my feelings, recording my perceptions of that day helps me to become more self-aware. And it's like over time, I'm building this database all about me and understanding myself as a person that I can go back to help me become more self-aware and understand my struggles and understand my strengths. And finally, another way to become more self-aware, and I won't go into detail, is to just read personal self-help and personal growth books, whatever it is you gravitate towards. Because I promise when you read a book like that, there's going to be a part of you that resonates with something that's going to, and it will ignite something in you, and it will help you to become more self-aware as well. I would invite you on your worksheet to write down what is one thing you can do to expand your self-awareness this week. Just one thing. Maybe it's you ask your significant other what they think your strengths are. Maybe it's you take the personality test. Maybe you journal. Whatever it is, just one thing to do to expand your self-awareness. The last aspect of this fifth pillar is intuition, following your intuition and taking enlightened action based on your intuition. The great Albert Einstein once said, The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant, but has forgotten the gift. Have you ever known something without knowing how you knew it? That is the power of your intuition. You can use your intuition to guide you and help you figure out what you want to do with your life. And you can also use it as an internal filter whenever you come across any information. For example, when you're reading a personal growth book, to decide whether you resonate with that information or not. Because guess what? You are the ultimate authority on your life. Intuition can often make no sense and come out of nowhere, but that is the beauty of it. I'd like to share with you 2 examples of intuition which have guided me and led me to where I am today. It was the summer of 2020, and I was just taking a slow walk in my neighborhood. And suddenly, I had this idea to get trained to become a support group facilitator for NAMI WLA. I had been attending these groups religiously as a participant, but never had I thought about getting trained to be on the other side. But I followed the intuition, got trained, and leading these support groups has become the most fulfilling part of my life to this day. And it led me to having a career in mental health. It led me to teaching the peer-to-peer class, doing Ending the Silence. It led me to becoming a peer support specialist with NAMI. And it led me to being a part of the entire NAMI community the way I am today. It's taught me, being a support group leader has taught me leadership, responsibility. It's taught me how to show up week after week after week. And there's something in the mental health field called the helper principle, which basically states that the people helping others often actually get more benefit than the people being helped. And that applies to me 100% of the time. Another event happened in late 2020. I was at a FedEx store, and I turned my head to the left and I saw a bookshelf on the far right-hand corner. And on that bookshelf, my eyes immediately went to this book written by the curator of TED Talks, Chris Anderson, this book right here, all about public speaking. And in that moment, I had this intuitive feeling, this intuitive knowing that I was supposed to pick up that book, read that book, and learn how to become a public speaker, which led me to joining a Toastmasters Club in 2021. It led me to joining a Toastmasters Club in 2023. It led me to participating in the last 3 Toastmasters international speaking competitions. And it led me to this very moment with you all tonight. And in addition to that, I'm in the process of applying to hopefully give a TED Talk one day. Public speaking was not something that I had been thinking about at the time. It was not something that I had been consciously thinking about doing. But when the intuitive hit came, and I like to call them intuitive hits, it was completely random and completely unexpected. You can use your intuition to help become aware of the next steps in your life that will take you closer to your deepest dreams and your greatest fulfillment. Then, when you take what I like to call enlightened action, you can move your life forward in a way that brings you closer to those dreams and closer to greater happiness and satisfaction. I'd like to, I hope I've given you several ideas to think about for your own recovery journeys or for that of a loved one. And I hope that I've given you several action steps to take along your own recovery journey. I know that recovery can be super difficult at times, but no matter what happens, don't give up and keep on moving forward, because you will look back at who you used to be 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago, and you will be so glad that you chose to believe in yourself and never give up. And you will be so amazed by the person who you've become and the progress that you've made. I'd like to leave you with 2 questions to ask yourself as you progress throughout your own life journey. Question number 1, what next step do I need to take to move my life forward? And question number 2, where am I along my recovery journey? And where along the 5 pillars am I today? And remember, recovery, I truly, truly believe that recovery is possible, and hope, the ultimate currency, is real. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Jared.
Thank you.
It's always such an honor to hear you do this talk and to do it this evening. I want to turn it over for Q&A, and I will stop spotlighting so we can see everyone. Please feel free to raise your hand or drop a question in the chat for Jared.
Oh, go ahead, Win. Or should I do it, Elizabeth, or should Monse do it, or?
Yeah, please, by all means, jump in.
Okay. I don't know who's first, but Lynn, go ahead.
Thank you, Jared. Good job. I wonder sometimes about the fine print in meditation. I'm a long-time meditator. I seem to always go back to transcendental meditation, but I did, oh gosh, over 5 years of Zazen with the San Francisco Zen Center. The fine print often says people with mental health conditions can get worse with meditation. I don't know who to ask about that. I've asked my Buddhist teachers and they don't know enough about mental health challenges. Have you ever heard that?
You know, I wish I could give you a better answer, but I mean, I haven't heard that, you know? I mean, obviously there's living with a mental health condition can have all kinds of complications, but you know, I couldn't tell you when it comes to meditation, you know. I'm sorry, I don't know. Yeah.
I'll keep asking around. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Jefferson.
So I'm going to start off by saying I love your answer to Lynn's question. So many people are afraid to say I don't know, and I appreciate that answer. So I'm just going to say that first. Secondly, just hearing your presentation of the 5 pillars and how you articulate your journey, it's a profound, wonderful presentation because it brings people along for the ride. I never feel talked at. I always feel like, wow, I'm included. And you always make me, I'm just speaking about my reaction to what you've shared. It always gives me like things like, wow, hey, I've never tried that before. Or that's something that I may have thought of, but you reminded me of it. So looks like you're done talking. So we'll lower your hand in 2 seconds. Okay. I'm not done talking, Zoom. So just on the pillars themselves, I love them all. My immediate reaction, and this is just my journey, is wow, you're so right. Finding a good therapist and a psychiatrist. But you know, sometimes financially, there's a financial issue that keeps me from getting there. So what do you say to folks who say, Jared, I love this first pillar. Just to get off the ground, I want to find a good therapist and a good psychiatrist. But money is an issue. What do you have any advice about that?
You know, it's funny because I was on a podcast with NAMI Virginia and they asked me what are the challenges for the pillars. And that was one of them that I said, you know, that it can be expensive to find the right psychiatrist or therapist. You know, I'm not going to deny that that's a real issue because it is. You know, what I can say is, you know, what I do recommend for people who are looking for clinical support is call their health insurance company, ask them to send you a list by email of the clinicians that are on plan. And sometimes that list is not going to be accurate. I've come to learn that. But there will hopefully be a decent number of people who are hopefully taking clients and hopefully are on the insurance so that, and don't quote me by this, but I think if somebody is covered by insurance, you just pay a copay, right? And the copay might be only like $40. And maybe, you know, that can be prohibitive for people too, but that's one way I think to find clinical support. Another way, you know, my dad used to teach me this. He was like, Jared, you can always ask. The worst thing you'll get is no. And so you can always ask somebody, like say you have say you really like a therapist, but maybe they're not covered on plan or something. You can always ask if they'd be willing to do a sliding scale, if they'd be willing to give you a discount. And they may say no. They may be like, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But they also may say yes. You never know. But I'm not going to deny that finances aren't an issue when it comes to finding clinical support. And, hopefully just don't give up on the process of finding it. And hopefully if you keep on trying, eventually you will find the right person at the right level of financial investment that works for the person. But what I will say is in the meantime, like hopefully you can lean on your non-clinical support as much as possible. Hopefully you can call the worm lines, right? The worm lines are free. And I think I know a lot of worm lines are staffed by peers like Lynn and Elizabeth and you, Jefferson, and myself and Monse. But some of the worm lines, it's possible that some worm lines are also staffed by counselors. Don't quote me on that, but I think I used to know of a worm line where you could press like 1 for a peer and 2 for a counselor. So not that those are substitutes for the clinical support, but it could be something in the meantime as you go through that process of finding it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
Great questions. Really great questions. Does anyone else have any more questions for Jared?
Happy to answer. Oh, Lynn? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have any guidance for when SI becomes a little too real? I have a history with the 9th floor parking lot down in Santa Monica. I don't even want to go near there now that I'm feeling great, but when I'm not feeling well, and that's dangerous. Do you have any words of wisdom on that or what you would do?
Well, first of all, I don't want to denounce or diminish how overwhelming it can feel in that place. Like how isolating it can feel, how overwhelming it can feel, because that's very, very real. Very, very real. I think when you bring it up, what I think about is the second pillar about having coping skills to use when in distress.
Oh, yeah.
And then also trusting the process of recovery. If I feel like if you have those 4 to 5 coping skills that you can count on when you're in distress, and maybe that just means calling a friend or calling somebody you care about because they're going to listen and be there for you. Maybe it means calling the worm line in that moment or calling 988 in that moment. But whatever it is, just having those available to you and just kind of ingraining in your head that like when I'm really overwhelmed, I can use these tools and I can get the support I need. And sometimes like I'll text my mentor and be like, hey, I'm struggling. And then he'll go, oh, what's going on? And then I'll send him a paragraph. And then I start to feel a little bit less alone.
Yeah.
So just keeping in mind the thing, it's like creating a safety plan or creating a crisis plan. It's like keeping in mind what you need to do when you're in that state of mind. And I still struggle with this last aspect, trusting the process of recovery. It's one of those like mind trips where it's like, I've been in recovery for so long, and I still sometimes forget when I'm in the down period that this is just a down period and it's going to go back up. But if we can remind ourselves with like the accumulated wisdom of our own recovery experiences, that at least intellectually, it doesn't feel like I can trust the process of recovery, but I know from past experiences that this is just a down period and it's going to change. So I would say, I hope that helps, but I don't want to discount how isolating and overwhelming and difficult it is to be in that state of mind.
Thank you, Jared.
Sure. Anybody else has any questions? Go ahead, Jefferson.
You know what I wish? I wish you had a podcast or something like that emphasizes the 5 pillars, because I think that.
Oh yeah, I'm working on that.
Oh.
Jefferson's been giving me his advice, so thank you, Jefferson. I'm working on a 5 Pillars of Recovery podcast. So
everybody listening to Jared's voice right now, you better subscribe because you're gonna love it. And
working on it. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Jefferson, for the.
Although there's no shaming in NAMI, I'm not shaming anyone, but I'm encouraging.
Yes. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, sure.
Just one little thing. I wish I had a picture of what you used to look like when I first met you. Because you look like such a different person now. You really do. And it's so wonderful to see. It gives me hope.
Thank you,
So,
Lily.
thanks.
And thank you, Lily. Does anybody else have a question? You're welcome, Susan. You're welcome, Santipe. Well, I guess if there's no more questions, Elizabeth, you put in the survey the Yankee team.
Yes.
You put in the survey um, and then also if you on the worksheet that I gave to you, my website is actually up on the worksheet, the 5pillarsofrecovery.com. So if you go to the media page, I have links to the podcasts I've been on where I talk more about the 5 pillars. And also I have links to some blog articles I've written on the 5 pillars. So the website is on your worksheet. And then just go to the media page on the website. You can kind of get some more content, some more content about the 5 pillars. So, and then I think also, Elizabeth, the questions that I had for the Google form, I think those are part of the worksheet, right?
Yes, that's also on the worksheet.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to get any feedback if you guys are willing to take a little bit of time and just give me feedback. It's just a couple questions. It would really help me out a lot because I'm always trying to make this better. And then before we go, I also want to say that for the first time, I've done this before, but for the first time, next Monday from 6:30 to 8, I'm going to actually do like an interactive workshop. So that's going to be more discussion and discussion questions and, give you guys a chance to kind of, dive in and, ask your questions and do a much more deeper dive to, to see how you can harness the 5 pillars and help you out along your own recovery journey. So we'll be sending a short version of that worksheet with just the questions, and we'll be sending a long version of that worksheet with some space to write in. But that'll be happening next Monday. I know it is the holiday and Memorial Day, but we will be doing that from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that is really like, come to be engaged, come to discuss. I really just want to have like an open forum and hopefully, hopefully I can just help out through the lens of the 5 pillars and helping people to address their questions or address what they need to do next along the recovery journey. So would love to see you all next week as well. I guess if that's all, Elizabeth, and Elizabeth has put the registration link for next week in the chat. Again, we'd love to see you 6:30 to 8. And the survey as well for the evening talk. That's in the chat. And with that said, I guess we'll end. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here.
Thank you so much, Jared.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, everyone, for coming out.
Thank you, Jared.
everybody.
That was wonderful.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Great job, Jared.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Your voice is coming back.
Yay. I was drinking a lot of tea.
Thank you, Jared. Take care.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for coming.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the room. Have a great
Sounds
night,
good,
Jared.
Elizabeth. I will see you tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow.